Okay, how's everyone this morning? Get up bright and early? Yeah. Had to do some watering of our garden this morning. Hasn't been watered for a few weeks, so... Well, Mary and I feel we've got a fairly interesting day for you today, if we can put it that way. The subject that we're going to speak of today is a part of our Spirit Life series of talks, and this one is called the sleep state. On Earth, not very much is known about the sleep state. And in fact, almost all people, including those people who are spiritualists of some kind, in the New Age movement or otherwise, there is not really much knowledge even amongst those kind of people about what actually occurs when you're asleep. And in this discussion, we are not talking about the dream state. We are talking about the rest of the time in your sleep state, because they are two separate things. So firstly, what we want to do is clarify to you what the sleep state is and how it begins and ends, and also clarify to you a little bit about the dream state and what that is in between, so that you get a bit of a picture between the two. But then we want to talk about your sleep state. And the reason why we want to talk about it is, if you think about it, you have 24 hours in the day. And how much of those hours, or how many of those hours, do you sleep? 5, 10. Well, let's go 5 to 10, shall we, on the average? The average person is close to 8 hours in terms of that time. So basically we're looking at a third of your entire life that is spent sleeping. And the interesting thing is you're not actually sleeping. That's the interesting thing. We want to describe what's going on when you're asleep. But there's a big portion of your life that you're not sleeping, that you actually spend in the spirit world, connected to your spirit body, and there is just a cord, a silver cord, that connects you back to your material body. So let's describe what happens with sleep. So here's your physical body, here's your spirit body, and here's your half of the soul. Spirit body, physical body. Now, when you're asleep, generally, but not always, your physical body goes horizontal. And for some reason, I've got this problem where if my physical body is kept vertical, I stay awake, no matter what happens, and no matter how tired I am. And I've actually stayed awake at some points in my life for 5 days straight. If as long as I stay vertical, I'll stay awake. But as soon as I lay down for myself, I'm generally out pretty much instantly, or very close to instantly, within a few seconds, generally. Now, for most people, a lot of people can sleep while they're sitting up and things like that, and I feel jealous of you if that's the case, if you can do that. But it's still the same principle as to what actually occurs, whether you're laying down, sitting up. It's just when you go to sleep, this is what occurs. So when you go to sleep, your physical body is generally laying down. And the spirit body, as you go to sleep, leaves the connection. Normally they're over the top of each other, like one over the top of the other. But as you go to sleep, there's a connection. Actually, probably should draw it a different colour just so you get the picture. There's a connection that happens, and your spirit body leaves your material body, but remains connected to it via a cord, which is called your silver cord. And remember, your silver cord is like, you could think of it like a wiring harness that connects the physical body robot to the spirit body and therefore to the soul, because the spirit body is actually connected to the soul. Does that make sense? So the soul still is capable of receiving input from the physical body, and this is why you might wake up in the middle of the night having to go to the toilet, because the soul is still capable of knowing what's going on with the physical body and the physical body's needs. But the primary area where it receives data from, if you could think of it like that, is now the spirit body, the spirit body's robot, if you like, and the soul being the container, which is yourself, and these two bodies being just the spiritual and physical ways for the soul to collect data, to collect information, to have its life experience. So once the spirit body steps out of the physical body, which happens when you go to sleep, the spirit body becomes the main centre through which experiential input is received by the soul. Does that make sense to everyone so far? Because that is the case, now the spirit body is capable of having experiences while you're asleep. And when I say capable, for all of us, it happens automatically. You all have experiences, and many experiences, while you're asleep. Now, the spirit body and where it can go in the spirit world is dependent upon the soul's condition. So if the soul is full of lots of very dark emotions and still has a lot of unhealed things to work its way through emotionally in regard to love, then the spirit body can only frequent the first sphere and usually the lower regions of the first sphere. So in other words, can only frequent the hells. But if the soul condition has started to grow in love and actually has got to the point where fear is not dominant anymore in the soul and things like that, then there's a potential, and you've dealt with different moral issues, there's a potential of you being in the second sphere. And so the soul and the spirit body would frequent the second sphere, if that is the case. Now, for the majority of people on earth, that is not the case. For the majority of people on earth, we frequent the first sphere of the spirit world, mostly. Now, in the first sphere, we have literally thousands of planes, if you like, which go right down into the depths of darkness that are sort of so black that you can't see yourself even. In fact, you can only have your sensory apparatus by feelings because you can't actually see anybody in the darkest of the locations in the hells. But right up to the top of the first sphere, which is Summerland, you can have an experience that's very, very similar to Earth. And the different things that you experience on Earth, very, very similar to the things you might experience at Summerland at some point. That's the first sphere where most of us frequent in our sleep state. So, we lay down, we go to sleep, our spirit body raises out of our physical body, and sometimes some of you experience that sensation of it happening before it actually happens, and you come back to your physical body. You've ever had that feeling? Where you're going to sleep and you go, oh, you know, like in shock almost, where you're going to sleep and then you come back very rapidly. Well, that was your spirit body leaving and then coming back very rapidly into your body, right? And there are reasons why that happens, and we'll talk about some of those reasons. But most of the time when we go to sleep, that generally does not happen. We go to sleep and there's this seamless raising, if you like, of the spirit body out of the physical body. And we now are attracted instantly to wherever our soul condition is attracted in the sleep state, in the spirit world. So, if I go to sleep and I've got lots of fear in me, I'm going to be attracted into a situation in the spirit world that is going to trigger that fear as soon as I go to sleep. Can you see why some of you don't want to go to sleep? If I've got a soul that's full of anger and rage in my normal state, but I don't admit to myself that I've got that, then I'll be attracted to a place in the spirit world where that anger and rage gets acted out. If I've got a soul that's been suppressed sexually in some way and has different emotions of powerlessness sexually or powerfulness, a desire for powerfulness sexually, then I'll be attracted to places in the spirit world where I can play that out. All right? All in the first sphere. So these are all going to be in the hells somewhere in the first sphere. Can you see why many of us don't want to remember our sleep state? Because most of us don't want to remember what we're doing in it, to be frank. If we start down here with Barb with some questions. And then up to Alex up the back there.
AJ, yesterday when you mentioned what you were going to talk about today, because I don't ever have any memories of my sleep state.
Yep.
Obviously at a soul level, I went into fear and got very emotional and started crying, but I have no knowledge of my sleep state.
Yep.
So obviously there was...
So the question then becomes, why are you so emotional about it?
Yes.
Doesn't it? Yeah. And we'll answer some of those questions today, in the discussion today. Alex?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Why is it... I just wanted to say about yesterday, just thank you so much. Hey, you're just an absolute inspiration and you walk the walk, hey. You don't just talk about some stuff and do something else. You're like this ship that just steadfast, just keeps going, Alex. And I just love you heaps. And
thanks.
Just, just about the sleep state.
Yep.
Is it... I feel like it depends where I go, depending on the emotions that I'm in at the time.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's very dependent upon a lot of things, which we'll go through in a minute. And it's very much related to yesterday's discussion, actually. Okay. Because you remember yesterday, near the end of the day, we listed all of the core emotions that, or core, you could call them core fundamental characteristics or traits that we really need to get through our facade. Remember, we mentioned trust in God, faith in God, having personal integrity, courage, those kind of qualities. Well, these kind of qualities are also essential for you to actually develop in your sleep state. So without those qualities, and this is why I've put the two discussions together, because I feel that what we learned yesterday is very much related to what we do in our sleep state. What we do in our facade on earth and what we do in our sleep state are very different to each other because of the facade that we live on earth. And we need to understand the relationship between our sleep state, what we're doing there, and why different things happen in our sleep state each night. And we want to, in the end, become fully conscious of everything we're doing. So, in other words, we can get to the point where you remember your entire sleep state, from the moment of leaving your body to the moment of coming back to it. And you remember everything that you did. Now, that would be pretty handy, don't you think? You'd be handy in a lot of areas, as you're going to find out today. So what we want to do is have a bit more openness to the understanding of what goes on when we're asleep. Yep. Tim, thank you. And then down front here afterwards.
Hello. So with the separation, like going into the sleep state,
yep.
It's actually not so much that your body, although it does need rest, it's not so much an automatic thing where your body just got to rest. It's more of a desire to actually go into the spirit world, is it?
No, it's a lot to do with the physical body needing rest. Your physical body, as a machine, needs rest in particular, one of the primary reasons why it needs rest is because of our emotional injuries. The less emotional injuries we have, the less rest our material body is going to need. Does that make sense to everyone? Because the more you have emotional injuries, the more turmoil is going on in your body. Your body's systems are under complete stress emotionally, and they're also physically under stress. And the only time they get a relief from that stress is when you go to sleep. This is also why when you get tired, before you go to sleep, you often get grumpy, or other types of emotions like that start coming up. And that's because your facade, the more tired you become, the more difficult it is for you to maintain your facade. Does that make sense to everyone? Makes sense, doesn't it? Right. So what happens for the majority of us, we have a lot of difficulty maintaining our facade during our awake state. And then, of course, we get tired. Our body is getting depleted. It's not able to revitalise itself. The spirit body's connection with our body also is incomplete in the sense that all of the energy that the spirit body has can't be passed to the material body to keep it functioning correctly. And so what happens eventually is we desire to go to sleep. Now, there are certain things, spiritual things that can happen that interfere with that process. So one of those things which is nowadays called manic depression, but it's actually a spirit over-cloaking, that can interfere with the process. In other words, a spirit can connect to your body through the silver cords, through the unhealed emotions of your soul. They can connect to your physical body and give your body energy, and therefore keep your body awake for longer periods of time. So a person who has manic depression will often, in their manic phase, which is actually their spirit-influenced phase, they will go through a high degree of spiritual activity where spirits are pumping them full of energy, pumping their physical body full of energy, because the role that the spirit wants is the spirit wants to use the body as long as it can in that state to do whatever it wants. Often what it wants is sexual things and other things, doing all of those kind of things. Have you ever seen what's it called, The Private Lives of... There's a TV show called The Private Life of... United States of Tara, that's what it's called, yeah. It gives you a very good illustration of what happens with that sort of manic phase. And a person in that spirit influence phase will actually go into this place where they need very little sleep. And the reason why they need very little sleep is because the spirits are pumping them with the energy that they need to stay awake. However, there's a toll on the body. And so after a while, the spirits can no longer maintain the connection with the body doing this. And so what happens is the spirits lose the connection of supplying the body with energy, and instantly the body is unable to perform the most menial of tasks because it's so exhausted. And that's what they call the depressive phase of the illness of manic depression. And that is all because of how the body is not being able to be replenished and revitalised during the process of sleep, because sleep is only, usually in the manic phase for a manic depressed person, is only an hour or two a day. And so they're not getting the necessary sleep that their soul conditions, emotions demand for their body to replenish. So our soul condition affects the bodies in that the soul condition affects how the energy flows and how the revitalising energy flows within both bodies. Now, if the soul condition is quite dark and being suppressed and limited, then what happens is the bodies become very tired and exhausted. But usually in our mind, we're trying to deny that. But the tireder we get, the more difficult it becomes to acknowledge how exhausted we are fighting our emotions. And that's why we can't fight our emotions as well. And that's also why we have a tendency to get frustrated, irritated and angry when we get tired. Once you've dealt with those emotions, you will not get frustrated, irritated or angry when you get tired. You'll just say, I'm tired, I need to have a sleep, and away you go, right? And that's the way it will be. Pauline?
Is that the same as chronic fatigue?
Chronic fatigue is a completely different medical condition, and also completely different spirit influence as well than what I'm speaking of with manic depression. Yeah. Yep. Down for now.
Hi, AJ. When I was 17, I remember going to sleep and waking up and living a life. I went to a place, I had a home, I had a family, I had friends, and then I'd go to sleep and I'd wake up and I'd go to school, go to uni, did art, I'd go to sleep and I'd wake up. And it happened for a couple of weeks, and then it got to a point where...
You're saying during the course of an evening you'd have many sleeps and wakes that you were actually feeling you were having while you were asleep in your awake state?
Yeah, when I was... So in my wake state, I go to school. And
so in your awake state, so you're awake?
I'm alive, I'm here.
During the day?
Yes.
On Earth?
Yes.
And then when you went to sleep?
I went to another house.
So you went to another house?
Another life.
Yeah.
And I had families and friends.
Yeah.
And I interacted, I did things. And then I'd go to sleep in that state.
So you go to sleep there?
Yeah. And I'd wake up in day state again. So
You'd wake up in this state?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And I did that for a couple of weeks, and it got to the point where when I'd go to sleep physically, like now, it got better. My other state was better, so I'd look forward to going to sleep. But then it got to a point where I started feeling I was going crazy.
Yeah.
Because I actually couldn't tell the difference anymore.
Yeah.
And that moment when I said, oh, am I going crazy? It stopped instantly, and I couldn't do it anymore. And it was a really strange experience. It was quite frightening, actually.
Yeah, when you were in this sleep-awake, you know, when you were awake but you were asleep state, did you feel like you were on Earth still? In another location?
Yeah, it was real.
Yeah.
It was a full life. It was, and it was, there wasn't any other dreams. It was just that, and it was I would take off, like if I was painting a painting.
And you have no idea what cause is?
No.
Like it's pretty obvious.
Sorry?
It's very obvious.
Oh, I didn't want to be in my physical state.
No?
No. Oh, you mean I was in my spirit body in a dream state?
No?
No. I don't know.
Does anybody know? It's really, really obvious. But nobody knows. Interesting. Mary knows. You overcloaked another person on Earth when you went to sleep.
Oh, wow.
And you lived overcloaking her life.
Wow.
And then when you woke up, you were back to your life.
Yeah, because it was a whole, like, in my dream state, if say I was doing an artwork or something, and I'd go wake up here, and then when I went back to that same place.
You preferred her life.
Wow.
Yeah. Everyone's a bit shocked about that. Yeah, you can overcloak another person just like spirits overcloak you while you're in your sleep state. They do it to us. They do it to you, you can do it to them.
Oh my gosh.
And many of you do this, by the way, believe it or not. Do you think it's very fair? No, but it does happen. So this is something to be aware of. This is some of the things that we want to discuss today. Yeah?
Hello. So does that mean that some of the spirits that, well, I don't feel I'm sensitive, but, that I hear about, that they could be people from Europe or
Definitely.
Wherever?
Definitely.
Visiting us. Wow.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes. The majority of people, in fact, do not like to go to sleep and go to their own place in the spirit world. So what the majority of people finish up doing is they finish up overcloaking or haunting, you could say, people on Earth, and they remain connected to the Earth while they're asleep, just in another location. It makes life pretty complicated, doesn't it? But we all do it for an emotional reason, you see? This is what we want to get at, what we're denying. So, Igor?
Does your spirit, body, mind has any control in your sleep state?
It has all control.
So you're conscious what you're doing?
You're totally conscious of what you're doing.
It's not just emotions playing out?
Oh, certainly it's emotions playing out, but you are totally conscious of what you're doing. Yes. This is why most of you don't want to remember your sleep state, because you're doing things that are not very loving to other people in your sleep state, and you don't want to remember. So what we do is we just do what we do with everything we don't want to remember. What do we do with that? We just block it all out. We just go, nah, that can't happen, and go on with our life, right? Isn't that what we do generally? Yeah.
So is this what deja vu, or having the feeling of being there before, or going to some place that you physically haven't been there before, and you remember that's what all this is about? You go travelling in your sleep state.
You've definitely been there before, just in your spirit body most of the time. Yep, definitely. Natalie, and then across to Joy.
So then you use the example of when we're awake and we don't want to know about something, we just block it out.
Yep.
Is it the same process then, that you just have to start having a desire to know and
Yes.
start feeling through the emotions that actually block you from knowing?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll talk about that later.
Okay,
Mary's got some lovely examples to give you later about that. Yep. Joy?
And that means we're continuing to degrade our soul condition?
Yes, many are continuing to degrade their soul condition in their sleep state while they think they're improving it in their awake state. Yep, it's very true. Gary? Just down.
So the person that's been overcloaked, would they act differently and, become, seeing you're overcloaking them, that person would be thinking differently and acting differently to their family, and probably people can't say, what's wrong with him today, he's like someone else.
Totally, but for many of us it's been happening for such a long time that they just think it's a normal part of your personality that's not actually you.
Like they might be called schizophrenic or something like that.
That's correct. Yeah, often it's called an illness of some kind, but for many it's not even noticeable in terms of there is a sympathetic attraction between the person who is awake, and the person who's in the sleep state, overcloaking the person who's awake. And as a result, sometimes the people around them know that something's different, that something's, they're not connected or something's different, but they don't really know what's up. And they start over a period of time, you know what it's like, over a period of time you just accept it, don't you? You just accept that's what it's like. So there's nothing else to do. Just behind Pete, if we go.
So AJ, does that mean that I could be now somebody else listening to you, and it's not really me that's listening to you, and I'm not interested in listening to you, really?
It's a possibility, but at the moment that's not the case for yourself right now. But it certainly is the case for some others in the audience right now.
Because my heart's just beating 10 to the dozen over that thought.
Yeah. It's amazing, really, isn't it? Yeah. Just go behind with the mic, straight behind you.
Like if you meet somebody and you think you know that person, is that you might have overcloaked that person in this?
You've obviously had something to do with that person in your sleep state.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of things you could have had to do with them. You could have just had a chat with them. You could have just met up with them somehow and then planned the meeting in your awake state. There's all sorts of things you can do, some of which are malevolent and some of which are benevolent and some of which are in the grey area in between those two states. All right? So there's a lot of things that happen in your sleep state. Yep.
Just can... Okay, thanks.
If we go to Peter.
I remember when you gave your first talk on Secrets of the Universe almost 4 years ago.
Yep.
And a lady in the audience said, I can't explain it, but I feel like I've met you before and I know you.
Yep.
And you said, we've met in the sleep state.
Yep.
And then later on, I was asking you about why I seem to be so passionately interested in truth. And you also answered that a lot of the information that you had presented to us in the talks over the years had already been presented to us in the sleep state.
That's correct.
I just asked those questions to kind of lift the mood a little bit because it seemed like we were going...
Why do you want to change the mood?
I know, it seemed pretty heavy.
Well, it needs to be.
It was all doom and gloom, but there's obviously it's
no,
it's
we
a
need. See,
mixture.
this is a problem we face, Peter. Is we need to come face to face with the truth, and the majority of us, when it comes to our sleep state experience, never come face to face with the truth while we're alive. And as a result of that, when we pass over, we might have worked through a lot of emotions while we're alive, but you'll actually find that you've yet to work through a third of all of your emotions at least. And on top of that, that your soul condition may not have changed very much because of what you're choosing to do in your sleep state. So this is why it's such an important discussion, to know your whole life, not just to ignore a part of your life. Now, for yourself, Pete, you do wish to ignore what's going on in your sleep state quite a lot. And to be frank, so do the majority of people wish to ignore it. This is why we can't remember it, but it's also, there are a lot of things going on in our sleep state where we act out the addictions that we continue to have that we're no longer acting out in our awake state. And this is a problem that we face. While we have the emotion in us that drives the action, we will actually, in the sleep state, act out those emotions, whether we think we're doing it in the awake state or not.
What would be an example?
Well, an example, let's say in my awake state, I've in the past had a desire to go to prostitutes in order to have sexual fulfillment. Let's say I learn the divine truth in that process, then I decide, well, no, that's not the moral thing to do, so it's not the right thing to do, but it's only an intellectual decision. I've now decided to not involve myself with, sexual immorality on earth. However, because I still retain the emotion in me, which is often it can be all sorts of emotions that drive a desire for sexual interaction with a woman. A lot of times it's to do with, I want the woman to make me feel good about myself. I want the woman to make me feel sexually good about myself. I want the woman to make me feel like I'm a powerful man or whatever it is. Now, if that emotion doesn't get dealt with, as soon as I go to sleep, I'll be having sex with all different partners all the way through the night. Right? Now that continues to degrade my condition, even though in my awake state, I am completely unaware that this is what I'm doing in my sleep state because I wish to be unaware. But also, it's the unhealed emotion that continues to drive the action. So this is why it's very important to understand. The key is to not judge it. The key, and when we get heavy, one of the reasons why we get heavy is because we're coming face to face with a primary truth and we're going, shit. Right? Well, there's no other way I can say it bluntly enough. What am I doing? This is what straight away. And this is an excellent question to ask ourselves. What am I doing in this sleep state? Is what I'm doing in the sleep state supporting my soul's growth, or is it because I am so in my facade in the awake state that I believe I'm doing well, and then as soon as I go to sleep, I start acting out all my damaged emotions that I'm denying in my awake state? Because what happens is this, because I need to explain a bit more about it before we answer some more questions. Now you're in the sleep state, what happens is, remember we drew the diagram yesterday, the diagram of the 3 sets of selves. You've got your real self, and then you've got your damaged self, and then you've got your facade. Now, in your awake state, you are in particular dedicated to your facade. By the way, many of you in your asleep state are also quite dedicated to your facade. However, there's a difference between the 2 states, and that is your facade in the awake state cannot generally be seen by somebody from at a physical level. So in other words, they can't look at your body and go, wow, you're in this facade, you're in this facade, you're in this facade, you've got this damaged emotion, you've got this damaged emotion. It's a rare person who can do that. All of you will be able to do that at some point in the future, right? And some of you are already starting to develop that ability. But unfortunately, for many of you, that's spirit influenced and not your own ability. When you have your own ability, you will not need to connect to a spirit. You will be able to feel the complete person, their soul condition, their damage, and their facade. Right? But the majority of us can't do that. So what we do is we look at the person as they are, and we go, that's Di, or that's Alan, or that's whatever, right? And so you look at the person, and you then think you know them. But what you're seeing is the facade. Physically, it's also the physical body, which is also a facade for the soul, if you like. But from an emotional perspective, you're seeing what they present to you, what they're attempting to present to you. Now, because of that, you can't actually see and look at somebody's body and go, wow, if you could see their spirit body, you could see their true condition. But the majority cannot see the spirit body of a person until they go to sleep. As soon as you go to sleep, you can now see the spirit body of the person. So you can actually see what their real condition is. Every one of you, when you go to sleep, knows the real condition of every other one of you here in the audience that you've caught up with, met in your sleep state, and you can see it in their body. Now, because of that, it's a lot harder to maintain the facade. Can you see? Right. Now, because it's a lot harder to maintain the facade, there's a higher likelihood of you living in the sleep state in your damaged emotions, living in the denial of them. Rather than trying to present the facade like we do on Earth, you actually live in the denial of the damaged emotion. So if the damaged emotion on Earth is that I still have all these issues with women sexually that I'm playing out, when I'm in my sleep state, there's a high likelihood that I'll be engaging with a series of or many different women over the course of my night, sexually. In other words, I'll be basically sleeping with women all night. Right? And then I wake up in the morning, can't remember any of that, and feel that I'm a nice, pure person who's got their morals all up to scratch, and that I must be quite highly developed, but the reality is that I've just acted out all night all of my unhealed emotion. Do you see that? Now, it's very important that we understand that. I don't see a problem that everyone gets heavy with that. I feel it's very important that we all come to terms with the fact that these kind of things are happening in our sleep state. Lorraine?
If I'm enraged with my father,
yep.
And I'm not processing it here,
Yep.
in my sleep state, I'm actually going there and raging at him.
Most likely. Yep, unless you're frightened of him, and then you might not be, right? But if you're frightened of him and you're enraged with him at the same time, then you'll pick a man on earth who's still alive and still in his awake state, who actually is a timid man who does do what women want, and you'll rage at him instead. Because you can get away with it without him getting in a rage with you and acting violently towards you, right? And that's what we do. Because we're still in denial, we don't want to feel our own rage, we don't want to feel our own stuff, and we end up acting it out with other people, not often the people who have actually done the damage to us, unfortunately, because we're afraid of them. So we act it out with other people. Yeah. Alan, and then Jason, and then Rochelle, and then Jenny. So if we go to Rochelle. Yep.
On another note, these proclaimed alien abductions when people are asleep by the thousands all around the world.
Yeah.
I investigated with a UFO group about 20 years ago, feeding another addiction of mine.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering what your take is on that. Is it possibly that the spirit is projecting another figure at them, but there is some over-cloaking going on and some nasty stuff?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of the spirits who do these kind of things are in a very dark state themselves, and their body is so difficult to maintain. They don't actually maintain what you would classify as a humanoid body to look at. And so many spirits in the sleep state, or spirits who have already passed that are already very dark, are actually in this state where their bodies look quite alien. And the body will look quite alien based on different emotional injuries that they have. So if they have an emotional injury with the intellect, and sometimes the head will be much larger or smaller depending on what the emotional injury is and so forth, of their spirit body. Does that make sense? And then as they deal with these emotions, it all goes back to a normal body that they would have had when they were in their 20s on the earth around about, and they look very similar to that. But unfortunately, what happens is that many of them are in a very dark state, and every time a person goes to sleep, they grab them, torture them, do whatever they like with them, and then when they go back awake, everyone thinks they've been abducted by aliens. And you can be pulled out of your, if you're willing, you're a willing participant through fear, if you can actually be pulled out of your awake state and into the sleep state as well by a spirit. So you can actually be driving along in a car and all of a sudden not be there, for example. right? Because you're in the sleep state doing things because of the draw or pull that you have towards that.
So if I've had a sleep where I've got my rocks off with a beautiful female alien, what's happening there?
Highly likely that it's a spirit who is engaged sexually with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Highly likely that it's a spirit who's engaged sexually with you in your sleep state, and there's been some, orgasmic experience as a result of that, and there's some kind of attraction going on there between the two of you.
And on another note, I've met some friends who have proclaimed to be celibate, and they don't seem to have a spiritual faith why they've chosen to do that.
Yep.
Could they be these people that are getting their rocks off at night while they're asleep, so they don't need any action during the day? Or?
It's possible, but it's also the opposite is possible, where they get overcloaked by men who have been monks in their life or whatever else, and they're trying to force celibacy upon them. So it's not their actual personal choice, but rather it's a spirit overcloaking them in their awake state, a spirit overcloaking them and causing them to be celibate. And in fact, some spirits even go to the extent of detuning. They because of the openness of different areas of our body energetically, they can detune the sexual organs and their responses. So you can actually make a person, if you're a spirit, and you have a desire to, and the person on the earth has an injury in that regard, you can actually make the person almost be completely detuned from any sexual desire at all.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. Most of us have no idea how much spirit influence we're under. I keep saying this to you. You still don't understand yet, but you will get there. And where was next? It was Jason, and then it was Rochelle, wasn't it? Yeah.
Hi AJ. My question is about a few weeks ago I had a pretty vivid dream with my father, and we were actually wrestling with each other, but I had a real strong feeling he was actually trying to kill me, and he was on top of me, and he felt like he had some kind of a glassy knife thing, and I had one too laying on the bottom, and I felt like he was just about to kill me and cut my throat.
Yeah.
Now,
and you woke up.
Yeah, but my question: do you actually really kill each other, or is it? Just
It's impossible to kill somebody in your sleep state, and impossible to kill a spirit. So the reality is that it's impossible to kill a spirit while you're in the sleep state. However, in your sleep state, it is totally possible to kill a person on Earth. All right? And there's a lot of ways you can do it. Now that's raised a lot of...
So if my father and I are both in sleep state trying to kill each other...
then that would indicate how much rage you have towards him in your awake state, that you're in denial of. Can you see? Yeah. Yep. Rochelle? It's all right.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, in the mornings when we wake up, I often wake up in fear, and is it best to... Is that the result of what we've done in our sleep state, and then therefore if we process that, we're processing sleep state experiences?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a direct... Usually when we wake up with a sense of dread, a sense of fear, all sorts of feelings we wake up. Many men wake up with an erection and so forth, and there's all sorts of reasons why these things occur because of what we've been doing in our sleep state. Right?
So if we keep processing in the mornings, we'll be dealing with that.
Yeah, what most of us do in the mornings, though, is we lay in bed trying to get back to sleep again when we wake up in a bad way, and that doesn't work. So we get up and we go for the addictive food, whatever it is that makes us feel safe again. So for some of you, that's like porridge or some carbohydrate. For some of you, it's like a coffee that you go for every morning. For some of you, it's an activity, like get up, go for a jog, clears the cobwebs out, sort of thing. And a lot of these actions are taken because we're attempting to avoid our memory of our experiences in our sleep state. Yep. Yep. Lots of questions, eh? If we come down just in front of Jason there. And then on this side, who had their hand up this side? Jen was next, that's right. Yep.
I have a lot of intense emotional pain through my waking state, but also in my sleep state. And when I wake up, it's very often in extremely intense emotional pain.
Yeah.
And so can you comment on that?
Whenever we're in pain physically, it's always the denial of an emotion rather than the feeling of an emotion. If we wake up in emotional pain, we're best in that moment going into that pain rather than trying to get away from it.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, that's good. So as long as you do that, you'll find you'll be able to work through a lot of things. But some of the emotional pain is caused by the not wanting to remember what occurred in your own sleep state that particular night. And so what I would be doing is I'd be praying about wanting to know, wanting to find out what's actually going on in your sleep state that causes you to wake up in the emotional pain.
Could it be terrible things I've done to other people?
It can be, yes, certainly can be. Terrible things you do to other people or terrible things other people have done to you in your sleep state. Usually it's one or other or both that have occurred that cause us to shut down our memory of it but wake up in the emotional pain of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And it was Jen, please.
I have two questions. I've had a very active sleep state for a lot of years. I'm starting to feel from what you're talking about that this is really rather serious. But most recently, it feels like spirits come and they chat or show me parts of their life. Like a recent one was a postman and his mate came in my sleep state to show me the boots that they were wearing while they were delivering their letters. And I woke up out of the experience, enjoying their boots, wondering...
What was all that about?
What was that about? And then moved on to another spirit that came in the next moment who had murdered their daughter. So in the night...
Murdered the daughter of one of the...
No.
Their own daughter?
Yeah, their own daughter, and was trapped in that experience and came to show me, and I woke up out of that, feeling like I was the daughter.
Yep.
So by explaining that to you, I'm asking you the question, in one sleeping experience, I can have 5 or 6 different kinds of spirits at different levels come and show me different aspects of their life.
Yep.
I wake up in the morning, I'm really tired. I've had multiple different emotions.
Can I explain firstly? Tired is always all about denial of emotion. Right? Always. The more we attempt to deny emotion, the tireder we become. So if we're waking up in the morning tired, then there's a lot of emotion that we're denying during our awake state and our sleep state. That's the first thing to remember. Secondly, many of your experiences are the result of different laws of attraction. So some of those experiences, like I said, will be benevolent. Some will be what you would call just a strange experience where, you looked at somebody's boots. And then other ones will be malevolent, where you've taken actions that are based on some unhealed soul condition within yourself that has caused damage to others while you're in your sleep state. Now, with regard to the boots one, a lot of that is also about denial, in the sense that many of you still want to engage what you classify as normal conversations. Have you noticed that? Like, you go and see a friend or a mate or whatever else, and before you know it, you're talking about, firstly the weather generally, and then you start talking about the car, and then you start talking about all these other things. And what I call distractive conversations. In other words, conversations that are primarily have the role of distracting you and them from how they feel and how you feel. And we have a lot of those conversations in our awake state, and we have a lot of those in our sleep state too. And you'll remember some of them. You'll wake up going, what was all that about? Why was I talking to that person about, the car that they just purchased or whatever? The other types of events are more driven by the unhealed, damaged emotions. So in our sleep state, we still do attempt to maintain some sort of facade, but the facade cannot be covered over from anybody else seeing it. So everybody sees it. And so what we finish up doing is associating with the people who accept the facade. Does that make sense to everyone? So in our sleep state, so in your awake state, let's say your facade is, that you're an upright, many Christian religious men are like this. I'm an upright, moral citizen of the world. That's their facade in their awake state. In the sleep state, the reality is many of them have these sexual thoughts going through their mind constantly of, who they'd like to have sex with and everything. And then they call that the torture of their own soul in their awake state, and they justify that Jesus' blood has come and saved them from all that and all that kind of stuff. They go to sleep and they finish up having sexual exploits through their sleep state. However, usually it's in harmony with other men of a similar nature who also do the similar thing, and so therefore do not condemn them for such actions. In other words, many of these Christian men, for example, who are in this state, are actually having sex with other partners in their sleep state, but generally associating with other men, right, who do the same thing in their sleep state, and so therefore they don't get criticised for such actions. They don't get judged for them. They're all accepting it. And the reason why we all accept it is, well, you've got the same injury as me. Yeah, no worries. And are we addicted to it? Yes. So let's go and do something about it. And we don't condemn each other for it. Right? And this happens very frequently. Yeah.
So my other question is about childhood experience and learning to be out of your body, which is the case of terror.
Yes, terror will usually cause you to want to go out of your body. But my suggestion has been fairly consistent with you, Jan, and that is you want to do everything that keeps you in your body. You remember when you went down to Cobra last week or the week before, you were very frightened of planting some trees because you needed to use your body to do so. So it's an activity that you had to be engaged in your body to actually perform. And you thought, before you began that activity, that your body wouldn't cope with it, you wouldn't like it, and all those kind of things, right? And then when you did it, you found yourself quite connected with the whole process. Very different experience than what you expected. Well, what's been happening a lot in your awake state is that you have a tendency to want to be out of your body quite frequently, because getting out of your body causes you to be disconnected from its size, its shape, all the things that are going on in terms of pain inside of it as well. It causes you to be able to disconnect from that or detune from that, right? And so there's a tendency then to go out of body as a justification of, it's too much in the body, so I'm going to get out of it for a while and have a rest from my body and be able to enjoy myself that way by detuning from the emotions and therefore the physical pain that is in the body. Now, my suggestion is to go the opposite direction instead in your awake state, and that is only do things for a while that are physical in nature. So during the day, do things like walking, planting plants, like all things that cause your physical body to become tired and also cause you to stay in it while you're doing those things. And the longer you maintain a connection with your physical body, there is a greater likelihood of you dealing with emotions in your awake state. All right? So
thank you very much.
Yep. If we come down next to Nat here and then across.
Is it working? Yes, it's working.
Fire away.
My question is, where is our individuality? That is the question I've been asking God for the last few months.
Yeah.
Especially when I came to a shed talk and heard that we were processing sometimes other spirits' emotions.
Yep.
And my despondency started there.
Yep.
And it's just really gone at a deeper level.
Down from that
now,
time.
Today.
Now it's going even down.
Today, where is our individuality?
Well,
that's the
you
question.
remember that none of these things can happen without the law. The law of attraction, this is one thing that many of us need to understand still. The law of attraction is perfect in its operation. Everything that's happening to me in my awake and sleep state is perfectly happening to me because of something that's unhealed within myself. Right? or something that's healed within myself, because the law of attraction operates perfectly in a positive direction as well as a negative one. Now, for that reason, the law of attraction is the way. Remember, I said a long time ago when I gave a talk about the law of attraction, I said it is God's messenger of truth to you. This is something the majority of us still don't really understand. We're seeing the law of attraction as a very harmful, persecuting type thing, rather than seeing the law of attraction as God's messenger of truth to us, right? Now, if in my sleep state I am getting up to all sorts of things, it's best for me to know them, because then I know what my law of attraction is bringing me in my sleep state, and therefore I know what my condition is. It's better for me to know them than not. And you don't want to know them. And that's the difference. You see, remember yesterday when we talked about the facade? The facade is all about not wanting to know the damage. You see, we judge the damage so much that we then finish up living in the damage rather than releasing the damage. The majority of us do this. And if we choose a facade in the awake state where we try to not live in the damage, we are guaranteed that when we go to sleep, we will probably be living in the damage anyway. This is why we need to give up the facade, because the facade is just like pointless in the end.
But we're not aware. You know, we've just heard, we're not aware of all these things we can be doing in our sleep.
I can't agree. We are totally aware in our sleep state what we are doing.
Oh, but when we wake up, because you said we don't want to know.
So we are totally aware, but we just don't want to know. We all have the ability to be completely aware of everything that's happening to us at every moment, including every moment while we're asleep. The problem we face is we just don't want to know. You see, many people, when they pass over, you know, they die on the physical plane and they pass into the spirit world, they actually finish up learning about all the things they did while they were asleep. And there's points of contact where those memories are triggered, and you finish up learning a lot of it. And a lot of the pain and suffering that many spirits describe after they pass, a lot of the pain and suffering of expiation of the law of compensation, is all about many of the things they did in their sleep state rather than their awake state. Now, my feelings are, and my personal practice is, try to know everything that you're doing. And if you have a strong desire to know everything you're doing, you'll have a strong desire to know everything you're doing in your sleep state. Right? So we will ask our spirit guides, we'll ask our friends, we get the chance to channel information from a medium, we'll ask, what am I doing in my sleep state? Am I doing this? Am I doing that? We'll want to know things, and we'll want to know it personally. Majority of us don't want to know even what we're doing in terms of our denial in our awake state, let alone our sleep state. That's why we're so addicted to the facade. So this is something we need to work your way through, you see. I'm only presenting the truth to you. That's all I'm doing here. I'm not trying to destroy your life. Do you understand? I'm not trying to make you morose and miserable. I'm just trying to present the truth and allow your minds to expand enough that you can begin to contemplate emotionally what this means to you and how this is affecting your own progression. Do you get that? So what I'm trying to achieve here is allowing more of the truth about your life, 1/3 of your entire life, in fact, and we want to know the truth about that 1/3 of our entire life rather than ignoring its truth. If we ignore its truth, to be honest, if you ignore the truth of what you've done in your sleep state or what you were doing in your sleep state, you will never become at one with God until after you pass. That's the reality. And I would love to see all of you become at one with God way before you pass. That's my desire, and that's why we're having this discussion. Natalie.
Sorry.
It's okay.
So, for the soul-to-soul connection we have with our children, we continue to damage them when we're in our sleep state through the unloving actions that we take?
A lot of times we are so different to our children in the damage that we carry in our soul that our children spend very little time with us in our sleep state unless under certain circumstances. The reason why they spend very little time is their soul is usually in a better condition than our own, and therefore they're attracted to an entirely different location in their sleep state than they are living with you in their awake state. So as a result of that, a lot of times our children have a lot more enjoyable experiences away from us than they do when they're with us. However, many parents have these emotions of ownership over their children and carry those emotions into their sleep state. And this causes many of those children who have parents like that to be forced, to feel like they're being forced into being with their parents in the sleep state. Now, for many of the children, that is horrific. This is why many of your children wake up with nightmares. Do you understand? Because they're not going to where they could go in the sleep state because of your demands upon them. And what they're doing instead is they're living where you are in the sleep state, and it's terrifying. And so they wake up with nightmares as a result.
I have one more question. I've started to process through some sexual abuse emotions in recent weeks.
Yep.
And Jade's been waking up from being asleep vomiting. She'll just wake up and vomit.
Yeah.
She's not sick. She feels okay after she's had a chuck, but I'm just...
She's just reflecting your emotions that you're denying in your sleep state.
Okay.
Yep, so there's stuff to go there in your sleep state. If you're asleep, your child wakes up in the middle of the night, vomits, but your child is not sick, all right, then there's a very, very high likelihood it's your emotions that you're denying that she's feeling and that she is with you in the sleep state in that moment.
Okay.
So you need to find out what's going on. Now, you've got the ability to talk to spirits, find out what's going on.
Yeah.
Right, talk to your guide, find out what's going on.
Thanks.
Yep. If you go, Renee, right at the back there.
Hi, AJ. Just a couple of questions. When I was little, I used to talk a lot in my sleep.
Yep.
And I still do it occasionally in my adult life. And is that channeling or is that spirit influence or is that just... And my sister also she used to sleepwalk and I did the talking. My mum used to tape us and...
Yeah, well, sleepwalking and sleep talking, probably two different influences. Everything that we do is driven by different emotions for a start. But if you look at what's happening many times, when we sleep talking, we are actually allowing this body, we've still got the silver cord connection, and we are expressing ourselves through that body, but still wanting to be out of body doing it. And Mary does that with me quite frequently. She wakes up in the middle of the night, yabbers something that is usually intelligible, and I start trying to have a conversation with her because I've woken up, and then when we wake up in the morning, she says she can't remember a single word of it, right? But obviously she's still maintaining distance between the physical body and the spirit body in that space. Right? Sleepwalking is a little bit different in some ways because it's driven to an action, and a lot of times self-destructive action. Where you don't have spatial awareness, and a lot of that would be driven by another spirit rather than yourself. Feeling forced by another spirit while you're in your sleep state to move your physical body. So a lot of that has to do with other spirits being involved with with what's going on for you in your sleep state. Yeah? Again, can all be discovered and worked through. Yeah?
And thank you. Also, when I'm in my day state, I might be going through something that's hard to handle or deal with, and I have consciously gone, oh, I know what I need to do, and I'll lie down and have a power nap for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and with an intention to want to get through it, and wake up and go, oh, I know the answer. I know what I need to do. And is that a normal thing?
Yeah, that is a normal thing. We're capable in our sleep state of thinking far more rapidly and addressing things in a rapid manner as well in the sleep state because of the power of the spirit body in comparison to the power of the physical body. And so, yeah, you can use that as an opportunity to learn things and so forth. So you can actually study in your sleep state if you really wanted to. And you'd actually be far more effective studying in your sleep state than many of you are studying in your awake state, believe it or not. So you can actually study in your sleep state, do no study in your awake state, and pass an exam.
Also, I tend to... I remember a fair few of my dreams, not all of the whole way through. But I go to sleep and there are a few dreams that I will wake up from and then go, oh, I really love that dream, and try to put myself back into that dream. I never tend to go back to the same spot, but somewhere in familiar surroundings and back into that dream again. And now I'm recognising from what you've said, it's very dangerous.
No, not necessarily, because some of the places we go to in our sleep state are also quite benevolent to us. They are quite lovely and they help us to feel positive about life and so forth. And we can have a lot of those kind of experiences in our sleep state, depending on our soul condition. So if our soul condition allows us to go up to the top of the first sphere, then remember the top of the first sphere is like Summerland, very beautiful, a lot of not as much heavy emotion as there are in the deeper parts of the hills. And so we will cycle when we go to sleep between these states that we are capable of being in. It's unlikely the majority of us would ever hit the second sphere when we're in our sleep state, but some of us might temporarily do so by being loaned some energy from a celestial spirit who's guiding us to show us something in that state. So we will often remember those kind of experiences. A person on Earth who's in a first sphere condition can often be taken almost up to and including the third sphere of the spirit world with the help of a spirit loaning you the energy to do so. And so that's one way we actually learn. We have spirits who are guiding us, taking us to a place and say, look, this is where you can be, this is what it feels like here, and so forth. But then we generally go back to our normal condition because it's not a permanent thing in our soul at this point. Yeah.
Thank you. Also, sorry, just going into the sleep state of where we're affecting others and over-cloaking others in our sleep state.
Yep.
How much effect are we really having on people? And also, I have, for example, my mum in my dreams, and am I over-cloaking her, or is she coming in over-cloaking me? So,
well, you have to work. I'll let you work that out.
Thank you.
The reality is we do have a large effect on other people, both on Earth and in the spirit world, by what we do in our sleep state. That's the reality. And many of us have a larger effect on them in our sleep state than we do even in our awake state, right? Because of the unhealed emotions that are much rawer and more easily felt in our sleep state. Does that make sense? So unfortunately, many of us do more damage in our sleep state than we do in our awake state. One of the primary reasons why is because in our awake state, we're addicted to other people's opinions of us. Whereas in our sleep state, you pretty much give up that addiction pretty fast, because you can see your own body and you know the mess it's in, and so you're no longer addicted to somebody else telling you that it's not like that. Does that make sense? Yep. Most of us finish up looking in the mirror at some point in the spirit world before we pass. Many don't after, as a result of what they don't want to face anymore. So when I talk to spirits who have passed, and I ask them, have you actually looked in the mirror yet? Many of them will say, no, I've never looked in the mirror. And I ask them why, and they say, because I don't want to see what is going to be my reflection. Because all the people that I'm with, they say, all look pretty bad, and I just accept they all look pretty bad without examining myself to see how bad I look. But they have an intellectual awareness that they must look as bad as the other people that they're with, but still have not looked in the mirror themselves. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, pass the mic straight across.
So what's the difference between the sleep state and dreaming?
Okay, good question. A dream is a little different. So we'll talk about our dreams. Now, for many of you, your dreams are a mixture of a sleep state experience and other things. But if we talk about the two types of states differently, because you'll get a bit of an idea of what's going on. When you're dreaming, there is a series of events in your, let's say this area of your life is your awake area of your life, right? In your awake area of your life, there are a lot of emotions that you're denying. And you're living, many of us are living in our facade and denying specific emotions in our awake state that actually still exist within our sleep state. And they still exist within our soul, these emotions. Now, once you set an intention inside of your soul to begin dealing with some of those emotions, in your sleep state, you make a choice to become conscious in your awake state about some of those emotions. And the way you give yourself the message in your sleep state to your awake state that the emotion exists within you that you need to address or deal with is by having a dream. So a dream is a message usually from your own soul, but sometimes combining with the souls of others, in other words, sometimes with help from other people. The dream is a message to your own soul about what you're denying in your awake state, in an effort to attempt to address the issue emotionally. Does that make sense? Now, that is a very, very different thing to a sleep state experience. Can you see the difference? The sleep state experience, there is usually no desire to address particular emotions. And particularly when we're living in the first sphere a lot, there is very little desire yet to deal with our emotions. And as a result of that, the sleep state experience is an actual experience that we're engaging in the sleep state, sometimes which we remember, but very rarely. Most of the time, we don't remember it in our awake state at all. So our dreams, so here we are in our spirit body in the sleep state, and what we're doing in this sleep state is we're trying to give a message from ourselves to ourselves in our awake state to break through an emotional resistance that we have in our awake state. Something that we realise in our sleep state we would benefit from if we actually addressed in our awake state. Now, many of you have those kind of dreams, and those kind of dreams have all sorts of natures, some of which are violent, some of which are fear-based, some of which are angry-based, some of which are sexually based, and so forth. That's not the same as having the actual experience in the sleep state. The reality for most of us is the actual experiences we have in the sleep state, the majority of us do not remember very clearly at all. The reason why is because we have huge amounts of judgment about what we're doing in our sleep state. Does that make sense to everyone? Which is very, very different to the dream state. Tara, thanks.
Hi. So is it more important to really focus on the emotion that we're waking up with from a dream rather than the actual really weird pictures that we got in the dream?
It's always the emotion. Always focus on the emotion. Yep. Now, there will be two reasons for the emotion. We might have just had a dream which exposed the emotion to us, so focus on that. But at other times we just wake up, there's no recollection of any dream, but we wake up in a mood, whatever that mood is. Like the mood might be fearful, the mood might be frustrated, the mood might be annoyed, the mood might be sexual, the mood... And those kind of moods are an indication of what's just gone on in the sleep state. Right? And we need to allow ourselves to feel more into those moods that we have when we wake up and attempt to begin to want to know the truth about them. Remember we said yesterday, part of the facade is destroyed by our own personal integrity. And it's destroyed by our own desire for truth and our own desire for growth and so forth, our own desire to trust God and have faith in God through the process. Now, if we're focused on this, on dealing with our facade, then what we'll finish up doing is we will not respond to what's going on to maintain the facade. We'll start confronting our addictions in all areas, including when we're asleep. Yeah. Now, the majority of us don't do that at this point in time. What the majority of us do is we are addicted to the facade in our awake state and also to a degree in our sleep state. And what we attempt to do then is we attempt to do things in our sleep state that act out the emotions that we feel we're not allowed to have when we're awake, right? So this is why we finish up doing usually a lot of things that are a lot more damage in our sleep state than we realise, because we're acting out the emotion rather than actually healing the emotions. Yeah? Now, dreams are an attempt to heal the emotion. So dreams are good for us in that regard. They're an attempt to display to us the emotion that we have and then to go and address that particular emotion. That's the point of the dream. However, that is very, very different from what we do in our sleep state. Usually what happens in our sleep state, like I said, is a variety of different things, but unfortunately, the darkness we carry with us causes us to do very dark things that we would not normally contemplate in our awake state. Ironically, the bright things that happen to us are probably more extreme than the brightness that we have in our awake state as well. You know, because we allow ourselves to feel what we feel when we're in our sleep state more, because we're not as addicted to the facade, because our body demonstrates the truth of our condition. Our spirit body demonstrates the truth of the condition. If we go to Ivana, and then Rose, back there, just keep your hand. Is it Rose? No. Keep your hand up, please.
I feel a bit afraid to say this, but I actually am having a lot of trouble believing you at the moment.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of
Can I just ask, who else has trouble believing what I'm saying at the moment? You mean Ivana's alone?
I'm the only one.
No, I don't think you're the only one.
Maybe the only honest one.
The only honest one without the facade.
Yeah, and I've got a lot of problems believing stuff about spirits as well, so I think it's sort of interrelated. Yeah, I don't really know what I want to say. Oh, I don't know, I just sort of felt like saying that.
Yeah, sure, that's fine. You don't have to believe me.
Yeah. I've just been finding myself zoning out a bit and being distracted.
Yeah, and I put to you that's because you're being overcloaked by a spirit who wants you to zone out, and anything that is to do with a discussion about spirits or a discussion about what's happening in your sleep state, they don't want you to find out about.
Yeah.
And this is a problem that many of us face, is that the spirits that are with us want us to not know, because then they can continue what they do. And we've got to look at our investment in that. We have an investment in that we're getting something from them.
Yeah.
And therefore we don't want to actually accept the truth. Now, the reality is, if you don't believe what's happening, just wait until you pass, and then you'll find out.
I don't think I want to do that.
Well, that's the other option.
Yeah.
And there are some other options, obviously, and that is to open your mind a bit to get to the point where you're willing to investigate this more fully, rather than just say, oh, I have trouble believing about spirits, or I have trouble believing about what happens in my sleep state, and then trying to just stay away from all of those experiences. You see, we're often led to stay away from experiences so that we don't discover the truth. And this is the influence that many spirits have upon us. When we have a desire in us to not know the truth, the spirits with us can say, you don't want to know that, you don't want to know that, turn off here, go to sleep there. And this is why some of you find some discussions we have, it's like, half the audience feels like going to sleep and feels like tuning out, zoning out, not engaged. And then all of a sudden we start talking about another subject where there's not as much emotional turmoil in the subject, and everyone's wide awake then and enjoying that particular discussion. And this is a problem that we face, is that we're often influenced to not listen to the things that would benefit us the most.
Yep, thank you.
Yep. Just behind Jane, and then to Jane. And who did I say over here? Oh, go ahead.
Is that turn on? Yeah. Going back to the dreams, I have had quite a lot of repetitive dreams, the same one over and over and over again.
Yeah.
As well as I have a friend who consistently has a lot of premonition coming through her dreams.
Yeah.
Now, with the premonition, like foretelling events.
Can I address the first issue first, this over and over again thing? That is to do with things you're ignoring in your awake state. Always. Yep. And it's your soul trying to tell you, look at this, 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 look at this. And it's, we in our awake state go, oh, I just keep having this same dream, and we ignore it. We have the same, I don't understand it, so I ignore it, sort of thing, instead of trying to discover more about it.
Yeah, so it's different concepts and everything, but with the same themes. So it's not exactly the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but okay.
Yeah. G'day.
Now, with the premonition thing, is my friend being shown emotional injuries within her that perhaps she needs to look at, that which are attracting events, or what's...
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, the premonition thing, because it's actually you generally trying to tell yourself in your awake state about something that's going to happen. Now, a lot of people don't have much awareness about what causes the event to happen, and so what they do is they focus on the event, and they're trying to feed themselves in their awake state, this event's going to happen, this event's going to happen, be aware of it, right? Not understanding, for the majority of people, that they could actually change the event if they chose to. And they almost look upon the event happening as something that they knew was going to happen, and then they have almost a fatalistic view of the future, that anything that they have a premonition about will definitely happen no matter what they choose. Does that make sense?
Yeah. She's lucky that she's actually been aware of what's happening, and she's looking at what she needs to change. For instance, she had a premonition that a caravan and a car was going to pull up across the street, and then it would explode.
Yeah.
And probably a week or so later, her ex-father-in-law pulled up across the road with a caravan and the car, exactly whatever. But it didn't play out. But because she was aware of making different choices after that particular dream.
Yeah, and it could have been that some of her fear would attract that Dad would leave the gas thing going or something like that, and then some spark or something would happen, and all of a sudden the van would explode. But if she dealt with a particular fear of that happening, that event wouldn't happen, you see?
Yeah.
So a lot of those premonitions can help you emotionally if you're willing to address the emotion. Unfortunately, in the general population, when people have premonitions, they just become very afraid of them, and they don't really address the emotion, so there's a high likelihood of the event actually occurring that supports their feeling that life is fatalistic and so forth, and predetermined. Yeah. Who was next over here? Yes?
I'm just wondering about all these monks who decide to be celibacy, and all the Buddhist monks and all the Tibetan monks. Are they basically overcloaked?
Many of them are, yes. Yep.
And also like children being put in monasteries, and isn't that an unloving act for these children to...
Many times it is. What happens often is the child hasn't got its own free will to decide whether it's going to be in a location or not, but rather that decision has been made by adults, usually parents, but often others, who are addicted to the concept that, if they have some degree of purity, that they shouldn't be sexual, and then they teach them to do that from a very, very young age. Unfortunately, many of these children are overcloaked while they're in the womb. So they actually become overcloaked by a spirit while they're in their mother's womb. And from that moment on, the spirit basically dictates almost their entire life, and their entire life is pretty much led and created by the spirit's demands upon the child. And the mother and father are open to that control because they have usually a certain religious or belief and a certain set of emotional conditions associated with that religious belief.
So all this Buddhist mythology and that Buddhist celibacy, and it's been praised a lot, and people go there and praise these Buddhist monks and these Tibetan monks, and it's very big.
Yeah, that's right. Well, if you look at almost any form of religion on earth, every one of them was seeded somehow in the spirit world. So there's been spirits who have actually guided the formation of every religion on earth. And these spirits are heavily involved in ensuring that their religion maintains a degree of presence on the earth. And as a result of that, the spirits are addicted to taking whatever measures possible to ensure the longevity of the religious teaching that they have promulgated themselves. And as a result of that, they will often resort to methods such as control, over-cloaking, all sorts of methods in order to ensure the longevity of their religion on the earth.
So what about the Dalai Lama?
Well, yeah, he's another person who was overcloaked from a very, very young age. He's now very rarely overcloaked now, but because of the overcloaking that occurred through his younger years, he now has a very firm set of beliefs and a very firm set of actions, and he gets spirits talking to him, telling him things all the time. And as a result of that, he has a complete set of belief systems that is the exact mirror of the previous Dalai Lama, which is the exact mirror of the previous Dalai Lama, and so forth, with a few little personality changes here and there. And the result of that is that you have the longevity of sort of like a dynasty. And there are many dynasties on earth, not just religious, but also political and economical dynasties on earth that are formulated in exactly the same way.
Thank you.
Yep. Who hasn't had a go yet? If we go there, yep. And Sam hasn't had a go yet, have you? Sam, next, yep.
Yeah, hi. I've had experiences in the dream state where I become aware, and then I'll go into a lucid state, and then I'll pop out in different dimensions.
Yeah.
Like shopping malls, golf courses, things like that.
Yeah.
I'll be flying around for a while, and then eventually I'll land, and I'll be basically, there'll be beings come and hunt me out of there.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious as to what's actually happening there.
In your sleep state, you are totally capable of travelling to any location in the spirit world where your soul condition allows, or on the earth. So this means that you can go and you use, the spirit body uses what you would call scientifically a portal in order to go or shift from one place to another, move from one place to another. And this can be done at any time in your sleep state. And so people often go rapidly from one place to another place to another place to another place. And if they're more aware of their sleep state, they will remember those experiences and actually feel them as they're going through them and wake up knowing what they were going through. And so many of the events that occur in our sleep state are like that, where we actually can remember them as they're occurring. And when we wake up, we remember the experience, just like we would remember any other experience that we had when we were awake.
So these realms, my take on it was that they're actual people in their addictions. And so when they pass, they go to these various levels of... is that what you're saying?
Yeah, in the first sphere, in the upper half of the first sphere, so if you look at the average of humanity, we mostly live in the upper half of the first sphere in terms of our condition. And in the upper half of the first sphere, there's all sorts of things. There's cities, there's country, there's shopping, there's all very, very close to a mirror of what's going on here on Earth, and to a large degree, right down to the fact that some cities here on Earth are actually a mirror of what was created in the spirit world, or vice versa, where there's such a... Like some people pass over here on Earth and they like where they live, so they create exactly the same thing in the spirit world to live in, and so forth. So you get all this mirror stuff occurring, and as a result, the majority of us can flip between experiences, of which there are literally billions of possibilities in the first dimension of the spirit world, flitting between these different experiences. Now, every time we do it, there is an emotion involved. There is some kind of thing or some kind of attraction that draws us to these locations. So if we can remember them, and remember there is always some kind of loving or unloving emotion inside of us that draws us to these particular experiences, then we'll understand why we went to those particular locations.
Just towards the... Most of the time there'll be beings that would basically hunt me out of there. I assume their spirit's not wanting me to explore any further.
No, there's also an emotion driving this inside of you, that you often feel like you're being pursued or hunted, or you feel that there's an emotion you need to experience. And I suggested it's an actual family lineage emotion that you've had over years. So there's something that's gone on in your family past, historically, where your family was hunted and it became part of your family's emotional injury set, and as a result, you now have that emotion within you that you're being pursued or hunted. So what I would do in my awake state is I would get out movies that actually are like that, being pursued or hunted, like Terminator series or something, you know, and watch them and feel my emotions while I'm working my way, while I'm feeling that feeling of being pursued and hunted down relentlessly. Yeah. When you deal with that emotion in your awake state, you will no longer be hunted in your sleep state.
Okay, just one more thing. I was actually like mugged by a couple of characters at one point.
Yep.
And I was stabbed, and I actually could feel that.
Yep.
It woke me up.
Yep.
And then from then on, I had issues with my heart where I was actually stabbed. Is that? Any clues there?
Yeah, this when we're hunted, when we have this hunted or feeling inside of us, there is often a large degree of sadness that we have associated with it, and that affects our heart. And so, what would happen when you get a stab in the spirit world, like through an experience, in a certain location? It's always related to the emotion we're denying through that experience. So there is a feeling inside of your family's, multiple generations of your family, that of this, why are we hunted all the time, this grief associated with being hunted, that very few of them in the spirit world have actually felt at this point. And so they still actually have it. They still have that same feeling of being hunted. That's a lot of grief associated. They almost feel like somehow they're to blame for being hunted all the time, but they don't want to go into the grief of it. They want to fight it. And my suggestion is to go into the grief associated with the feeling. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. What's the time? It's half an hour, so. Lots of questions, guys, but I'm not getting to present what I want to say. Jane was next, weren't you, Jane? And then it was Sam after Jane.
Thanks. Just a quick question. If I've had yourself or Mary in my dreams, or are they more dreams than actual sleep state experiences?
And they can be a combination of both. Yeah. Like if I'm saying something that it wouldn't sound like I would normally be saying, then it's highly likely it's a dream, not a sleep state experience. If I'm saying something that it sounds like I probably would say, then most of the time that would be a sleep state experience. We visit many of you in your sleep state. Many of you have recollection of that because there's so much going on in the sleep state that can be addressed if we allow ourselves to remember what's going on. So many of your celestial friends do exactly the same thing. Visit you in your sleep state, trying to help you through different emotions, and the layers of resistance in you depend on whether you listen to them or not at the particular time. So, yeah, that goes on pretty much all the time.
And just also, does that mean you're able to then go down to the first sphere to visit? Yeah.
Yep. Any person in any condition pretty much can go into the first sphere. So even if I was in a really dark condition, I could go into the first sphere, right? Not all of us can get in the second, and a few in the third, and hardly any at all in the fourth, or so forth. But the issues we face is, while we do what we do in our sleep state without a consciousness of in our awake state, there's a high unlikelihood that we'll address the unloving emotions that exist, and unfortunately, high unlikelihood that we'll ever get out of the first dimension as a result. Yeah. And so a lot of times you have a lot of spiritual help in your sleep state, with people trying to wake you up, like be aware, have some integrity, have some, those things we talked about yesterday that get us through the facade. They are the things we need to develop both in our awake and sleep state, because if we develop it both in our awake and sleep state, we'll get to a point where we'll no longer tolerate certain behaviours that are going on for us in our sleep state. We'll no longer tolerate, we won't do it anymore. Even though we feel like a burning desire to do it, we still won't do it because we know that it's out of harmony with love. And this is where we need integrity.
And can I just say, when you guys do come into either the dreams or sleep state experiences, it's the times when I feel I'm quite stuck or blocked. Yeah. And then I find I'm able to then move through something, which is pretty good. So thank you to both.
No worries, it's our pleasure. There's a lot of issues we face in our sleep state And we often need help to get through those particular issues. There's also a lot of issues we face in our awake state that we're not allowing ourselves to be conscious of. And what myself and Mary, to a lesser degree, attempt to do is try to help the person in the sleep state so that they become conscious of those particular things in their awake state. Yeah. Who was next? Sam?
I was actually going to ask exactly the same question as Jane.
Great minds think alike, is that the idea? That's right, yeah.
It feels like the dreams I have of you and sometimes Mary as well might be a combination as well, because it feels like you guys, but they're a bit trippy and dreamy as well, a bit symbolic.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask, is it my desire to connect with you guys that kind of attracts that, or...?
No, most of the time we're attracted to people who have a desire for truth. So it's not just people here in an audience that would experience us visiting them in their sleep state. The majority of people that we meet, in fact, all have felt they've met us before. And that was before any of the media occurred where they saw us on telly or something like that. And so for the majority of people, that means that they have met us in their sleep state. And usually we're attracted to people who have a strong desire for truth. Or a stronger than average desire for truth, shall we say. And so what we do is we want to connect to them in any state that's possible. So a lot of times it's a lot more possible in the sleep state, and so we connect with them there. Yeah.
Thank you. Just one more question, if that's okay. For as long as I can remember, I've had a lot of resistance to going to sleep and have felt that it's to do with fears of spirits and experiences I've had where I've seen horrible spirits going into that transition state into sleep. But from today, it could also be a lot of fear about really experiencing the actual location that reflects my true soul condition. But it could also
experiencing events that you choose to take that you feel quite ashamed of.
Okay, so that it could be any of those three things or a combination of all of those.
And usually a combination of all of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Who's not had a go? Elizabeth hasn't had a go yet. So Elizabeth and the just there hasn't had a go yet. Thanks for running around for us, guys, or girls, I should say.
This is a question I've actually wanted to ask you for a very long time.
Yep.
And it's to do with snoring.
To do with?
Snoring.
Snoring, yep.
And what happens... my ex-husband was a dreadful snorer. I could have killed him. And I wondered what that is all about. That one.
It reminds me of a family that I once knew. If you stayed in their house, both the father and the mother would snore, but they wouldn't wake up. And one day I was staying in the house and it felt like, you know how the cartoons, they go, how the walls go out and the walls go in? That's what it actually felt like. It was so loud. They were 3 bedrooms down and we could hear them like plain as day, snoring away. And then we heard their daughter get up. She ran into their room and screamed at them both, woke them both up, screamed at them both for snoring because she was and then went away. But it was just so funny, I thought. Now, the question was about snoring and what actually happens. I feel a lot of snoring is about what happens in your awake state, denial of different emotions, actually, rather than what's going on so much in your sleep state. People who snore also generally have physical problems related to emotional problems that they are in denial of in their awake state. And that's why the majority of people who do snore are generally larger people and generally are not, you know, they are not in their body generally as much as they could be. But also they have a lot of emotional issues related to relaxation in their day-to-day life generally as well. So there's quite a lot of different issues that dictate a person snoring, but I don't think it really pertains to this discussion because it's not really due to sleep state experiences. It's more to do with denied emotions in their awake state and their own physical condition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
As a result of the denied emotions, their own physical condition. Yep. Who was next? Dee?
AJ, am I understanding correctly that in the sleep state we're actually interacting with other souls,
Always,
but not in our dream state?
In our dream state, we could be, because remember the dream state is you in your sleep state trying to give yourself a message that you'll remember in your awake state. That's what your dream is all about. Now, you may often get assistance in doing so. There's a very good description of that in the Robert James Lee's material where Frederick and another spirit try to help Frederick's father remember something, right? But the problem is they tried to help him remember something that he didn't really want to remember, and so, of course, he forgot it. But there was also a spirit with him, over-cloaking him, and as soon as he awoke, the spirit was also trying to interfere with his memory of that particular sleep state experience. And it's a very good description of what actually does occur to many people when they hover between the sleep and awake states.
So we can damage other people in our dream state and they can damage us?
Not in your dream state,
no.
In your sleep state.
Okay.
So you remember your dream state is you in your sleep state attempting to give yourself something in your awake state that you don't know or are not dealing with, and you give yourself a series of pictures and other types of things to cause the trigger of that particular emotion. Now, in that space, you're not damaging anybody else. You're not even damaging yourself. You're trying to help yourself, right? That's totally different than an actual sleep state experience that's involving other people and so forth. Totally different. Usually in those experiences, we have a tendency to damage others, yes.
And so just another question, before we go to sleep, can we actually ask for help in our sleep state or in our dream state, like invite celestials or...
Yes, but let's remember something I said yesterday. Many of you think you're asking for help, but you're not actually asking for help. Can I just explain what I mean by that again? What's often happening is, here's your mind saying a prayer to God, right? But your heart, your soul, has a completely different emotional feeling about that. Now, is that prayer ever going to get anywhere above your head? No. What we've got to have is our soul has to be in harmony with the mind's prayer to God for it to actually be a desire that we wish to have fulfilled. So if I can give an example of this. We may think that we desire to heal, say, some sexual issues that we have. So we ask God to help us to work through the sexual issues that we have. But in our soul, we have huge feelings of, I don't want to work through this issue, it's too hard to work through, I don't want to have those issues, I feel ashamed and I don't want to feel my shame, I feel angry that the men have harmed me, or whoever has harmed me, that caused these sexual issues to occur, and so forth. And I've got all these blockages in my soul saying, no, 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 no. At the same time, my mind saying, please show me the truth. Now, does the soul really want to know the truth? No. Who does God respond to? God responds to the soul of an individual, not the mind of the individual, to the soul. And the only time God responds to the mind is when the mind's in harmony with the soul. That's the only time that God will respond to the mind. So most of the time, for many of us, the prayer is not to actually expose the truth, but the prayer is to cover it over. The prayer is to keep it suppressed. Our actual desires are often working in complete disharmony with what God's truth or love would dictate if we were in harmony with that.
So does that mean we will only receive help in our sleep state when we're in that true desire for truth?
It's exactly the same as our awake state. It's only when we're in our true desire that we're going to receive help. And it's only our true desires that are our prayers. All of the desires that are out of harmony with love are no longer a prayer that God can watch us doing it, but God's not going to answer it because he can't. Because we need to have a pure desire with our prayer for them to actually be activated. Desire is prayer. In most of the time, desire is prayer. You stay in your desire, you're going to be praying pretty much constantly. It's when we want to have our desires met in other directions that we have the trouble. And for many of us, what we're trying to do is have our desires met to deny something, have our desires met to not know, to not understand, to not see. And so they are the desires that we have. Now, God's universe is set up to totally do the opposite of that. God's universe is set up to expose everything to us, to make us see, to do all of these things, to expose the truth. But we're exercising our desire most of the time in the complete opposite direction to that. Right? Now, we can't then go to God, let's make out that I actually have a desire. You can't fake it till you make it. You know that saying? You can't do that with God. It's either real or it ain't real. One of the two. Now, if it's a real passionate desire that exists within your soul, it's already a prayer, God's already responding to it. But the more you become consciously aware of that passionate desire and the more you feed it, the greater the desire becomes, and you will get to know the truth very rapidly if you set your desire like that. Mary wants to talk to you about that when she gets up. But if you allow yourself to think that you've got a desire, while at the same time your very life would demonstrate that you have none whatsoever, then don't fool yourself. You're better off going, yeah, my life is really telling me I don't really have a desire at all. You know, my life's really saying, I don't really want to do anything. And be honest about it at least, because without the truth, without the honesty, you are not going to be able to progress or change.
Thank you.
So that's the key. Yep. Who has another go? Rita has another go. And yes, up there. So. Yep.
I have been most of my life, for large periods, for 30 or 40 years, listening to some spiritual CDs or tapes before I fell asleep, and also when I woke up at night, and including in recent years HA MP3s. And I have recently, for a couple of weeks or months now, stopped that, or it just happened because I didn't have it with me. And I notice now I wake up with fear, and I wake up during the night, not very often, but I do that, whereas previously I was just always happy. And I'm not happy anymore, not in my bubble anymore. Yeah. So is it actually good not to listen, not to fall asleep with HAMP3s?
Yeah, the reason why many of you are consistently listening to what I say, listening to the DVD, listening to the tape, playing it constantly with everything you do, is because you do not want to tune into your own emotions. And you use it as a way of avoiding yourself, right? And it's not a very good practice. In fact, it's harming people. When you have a strong desire to do something, you will listen to a presentation. You'll take down a lot of notes probably from that presentation, and instead of using it as sort of a way to calm yourself down through your life, just like the same way people would use meditation or some other technique, you're using it to expose the truth and bring up things in your life. Now it's going to have some positive effect. But while you're using it to make you feel calmer, to make you feel safe, to make you feel secure, to make you help you understand and all those kind of things, and you're using it then as a tool or a crutch to actually, so you imagine yourself with a crutch with a broken leg. The broken leg is, I don't want to trust myself. I don't want to look at my own emotions and my own feelings. I want to feel good all the time, right? And so we put the crutch there, and that's the way we are, and we need that thing to make us feel good all the time. And you take that thing away, and what happens? Start feeling bad. So for many of us, we put that thing back, right? So that we feel good again. And what we need to do is what you've just done, Rita, and that is to stop that process and to start engaging how you really feel without trying to tune out of it. Now that's very different to receiving encouragement. So don't be afraid to receive encouragement. There's a lot of things that can give us encouragement, and there's things we can do to receive encouragement. So I'm not decrying any of those things, but what I'm saying is there is a danger of listening to something over and over and over again, not because you're actually listening, but because you want to use it as a crutch to look after some emotion. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. And yep.
Hi, AJ. I wake up at nights. Actually, I don't wake up. I'm crying, I'm screaming, and I sweat, and I'm wet from tears, and I shake.
So you're crying and screaming, but in your sleep?
Yeah, and I don't wake up.
And your husband wakes you up, or someone wakes you up?
Yes.
Yep.
And I was thinking maybe I'm processing emotions, but what you were saying to Elizabeth about snoring, is it the same thing? Do I deny my emotions? And
what's happening in reality is you're having a sleep state experience which is terrifying you, and it's terrifying you so much that you're now verbalising it in your awake state, in your body, I mean, while you're asleep. So the key is to wake up in those circumstances and to feel your fear in the awake state as well, because something is attracting you to a location in the spirit world where you're having a terrifying experience, and that something has to always be related to the terror that you're experiencing in that experience. So what I would do is I would wake up and try to feel the terror that I feel in my awake state, that obviously I'm in a lot of denial of in my awake state, but which I am attracting in the sleep state. Yeah? Does that make sense? Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
So, following on from that then, I recently had an opportunity to spend some time with my aunt who was dying.
Yep.
And I noticed a couple of times, especially early in the piece, because it was a very quick process for her, you know, that she would wake up terrified. But she doesn't have the opportunity to go back to feel, because she wasn't there, you know, like she was really, I don't know how to describe it. She was very, very fearful. And there was always somebody with her 24 hours a day. That was why I was there, to be one of those people. And all I did with her was just give her some reassurance that where she was, because I felt that what was happening was that she was having an experience where she was maybe being shown where she was going to in the spirit world and really didn't want to go there. Mm-hmm. So I just sort of spoke with her about that where she was going to, she didn't have to stay. And then I would just say the prayer for divine love and reassure her. But people that are dying who don't get that opportunity then to be awake, what's the best way to help them?
Well, it's the same process. While they're asleep, they can still be attracted to whatever you say to them. They can hear you in your awake state when they're asleep. So say exactly the same things. So there's a beautiful thing about being with somebody who's passing, because you have the opportunity in this moment to teach them a lot of things if they're willing to be aware. Many are not, obviously, but many also can be. And so we have the opportunity to teach them the truth. Now, a majority of people drag out their death for reasons of fear. You know, they're terrified of where they're going to go, where they're going to be. And we need to give them some reassurance that, like you said, that they don't need to stay there. They can develop their soul in love and not stay there. Now, they may listen to that, and many do when they're in that quasi state just before death, you know, where they're just about halfway there and halfway here in that place.
I noticed that the first I was there for 11 days. The first 4 days or so, it was really obvious the fear that she was waking up in. But then she progressively became calmer.
Yeah. And what I would suggest is that your words helped her see that she could get out of that location. Then she was probably more open to hearing from some brighter spirits as well through the prayers that you were giving. And so she probably started talking to those particular people while she was in her sleep state, and that helped her feel much more calmer, and therefore also helped her to be willing to pass rather than holding on to dear life with her body as long as she possibly could. Yeah.
Well, she, you know, when I first went up there, it was because the doctors had said, oh, she's only got a day or two left, and it was 2 weeks after that, so she was holding on fairly tightly.
Yeah.
But she was getting a lot calmer as the time progressed.
And that's good. And a lot of the times of passing, you can assist a person who's passing quite a lot, right? Just by helping them understand the truth of what's happening, the truth of the location where they're going to. Praying for them helps them as well, because it brings spirits who are in a bright condition to help the person as well. God sends those spirits based on your prayer and longing, if it's sincere. And all of those things assist the person to come to acknowledgement of their own condition, but also to be able to then take steps to improve their condition, even before they've died. They have the ability to improve their condition so that they don't pass into this place that they were first shown. Unfortunately for many, though, they never listen to that, and they do pass exactly where they were first shown, and many don't listen to the possibility of change. It's the love that they feel from you that will cause their change. So when you express true love and desire for them to become aware of different truths, now they have a very good opportunity to change, and most do change. They might not change rapidly, but at least they change enough to not be attracting that location that they were originally going to go to in the spirit world. And the darker the location that you go to in the spirit world in terms of when you pass, the more difficult it is to get out of it as well, unfortunately, because the darker location is a reflection of the resistance of your soul. So it's telling you that you're already in a lot of resistance. So if we can overcome the resistance of many of the people who are just about to pass to what's going on inside of their soul, then already we've helped them get out of a darker condition into a brighter condition just by overcoming their resistance to truth. Yeah. So it's very, very good to do those things. Yeah. Right up the back. Thanks.
I often wake up... Did that even work? I often wake up singing a song. Like, I notice when I come back into my body, there's a song there, and I'm just curious what's going on.
Yeah, what I would do is I'd listen to the message of the song. I used to do this almost every day, wake up singing a song, and I still do it occasionally, as Mary knows. And I just listen to the Mary of the song. I listen to the theme of the song, and what's going on in terms of song, and feel my feelings about that as to what's going on. And you'll always, it often is a reflection of what you've just been doing in the sleep state, or an emotion you've just been feeling in the sleep state. And it's a way of giving yourself a message about that. Some of it will be good and some of it maybe not so good. It just depends on the message of the song. Yeah? Now it's time to have a break, I think. How do you feel so far about the subject? Now I'm answering a lot of questions, but the problem is, with answering all of your questions, is many of you are not asking the right questions. because what you're doing is you're asking very personalised questions, but they're not questions associated with what's actually going on in terms of the overall view. And so what we'd like to do after the break is to present to you, and Mary would like to present to you by herself. She wants to present to you some things that have been happening for her and her realisations of what's been going on in the sleep state for herself, and the correlation between what was happening in the sleep state for herself and what's happening in the awake state, and the denial and the facade and those kind of different emotions. Does that make sense? So what we want to do is present to you that so you get a bit more of a picture of what's going on. We feel the problem with a bit too many questions is that we can get off the point when you need to investigate your own personal issues with regard to the sleep state, and there needs to be a desire inside of you that builds to know your sleep state. Does that make sense to everyone? And while I answer your questions, that doesn't necessarily mean you have a desire to know what's going on in your sleep state. That's something that you personally need to develop. So what I would suggest to you is to have a listen to the experience in the second half of this discussion. It's going to be quite tough for you to perhaps listen to, what Mary wants to talk to you about. And she wants to demonstrate the relationship between what we spoke of yesterday, which was all to do with the facade self, and the relationship between what happens with the facade self when you're on Earth and then what goes on in the spirit world due to the denial of the underlying damaged emotions that are caused by wanting to maintain the facade self. So we want to illustrate all of that. Mary's going to illustrate that a bit on the board for you, and she's also going to illustrate that through some of her personal experiences so that you can understand more fully what you need to be brave enough to discover. Does that make sense? And when I say need to be brave enough, remember one of the qualities yesterday that breaks through facade? Courage. Courage. So, we need courage, and we need to develop that quality within ourselves. And hopefully this might help you to develop some courage without a quality that is quite damaging to you, and that's the quality of judgment. All right? We need to have courage without judgment. That's what we need to have. So if we could do that, if you just wait a few minutes while the ladies outside pull apart all of our food for us, and then we'll get started if we can come back about 45 minutes' time, that would be great.